The Book of Psalms is an anthology of Hebrew religious hymns. In the Jewish and Western Christian traditions, there are 150 psalms, and several more in the Eastern Christian churches. The book is divided into 5 sections, each ending with a doxology, a hymn of praise. There are several types of psalms, including hymns or songs of praise, communal and individual laments, royal psalms, imprecation, and individual thanksgivings. The book also includes psalms of communal thanksgiving, wisdom, pilgrimage, and other categories. Many of the psalms contain attributions to the name of King David and other biblical figures, including Asaph, the sons of Korah, Moses, and Solomon. Davidic authorship of the Psalms is not accepted as a historical fact by modern scholars, who view it as a way to link biblical writings to well-known figures. While the dating of the Psalms is notoriously difficult, some are considered pre-exilic and others post-exilic. The Dead Sea Scrolls suggest that the ordering and content of the later Psalms, Psalms 90 to 150, was not fixed as of the mid-1st century after Christ. Septuagint scholars, including Eugene Ulrich, have argued that the Hebrew Psalter was not closed until the 1st century after Christ. The English-language title of the book derives from the Greek word psalmoi, meaning instrumental music, and by extension referring to the words accompanying the music. Its Hebrew name, Tehillim, means praises, as it contains many praises and supplications to God. Many psalms, 116 of the 150, have individual superscriptions, titles, ranging from lengthy comments to a single word. Over a third appear to be musical directions, addressed to the leader or choirmaster, including such statements as with stringed instruments and according to lilies. Others appear to be references to types of musical composition, such as the psalm and song, or regarding the occasion of the psalm, on the dedication of the temple, for the memorial offering. Many carry the names of individuals, the most common, 73 psalms, being an of David, and 13 of these relate explicitly to incidents in the king's life. Psalms are usually identified by a sequence number, often preceded by the abbreviation PS. The numbering of the psalms differs, mostly by 1, between the Hebrew, Masoretic, and Greek, Septuagint, manuscripts. Protestant translations use the Hebrew numbering, but other Christian traditions vary. Official Catholic liturgical texts, such as the Roman Missal, use the Greek numbering. Modern Catholic translations often use the Hebrew numbering, while noting the Greek. Eastern Orthodox and Eastern Catholic translations use the Greek numbering, while noting the Hebrew numbering. The difference between the Masoretic and Septuagint texts in this numbering is probably due to a gradual neglect of the original poetic form of the Psalms. Such neglect was caused by liturgical uses and copyists' carelessness. It is generally accepted that Psalms 9 and 10, Hebrew numbering, were originally a single acrostic poem, erroneously divided by the Masoretes and correctly united by the Septuagint and the Vulgate. Psalms 42 and 43, Hebrew numbering, are shown to be 3 stanzas of the same poem by the identity of the theme, longing for Yahweh's home, the metrical structure, and the refrain, comparing Psalms 42 verses 5 and 11, 43:5, Hebrew numbering. The Hebrew text is correct in counting Psalms 146 and 147 as one. Later liturgical use seems to have divided these and several other psalms. Zeno combines into what he considers original choral odes. The choral ode seems to have been the original form of Psalms 14 and 70. The 2 stanzas and the epode are Psalm 14, and the 2 antistrophes are Psalm 70. It is noteworthy that in the division of the original ode, each part slipped twice into the Psalter. This loss of the original form of some of the Psalms is considered by the Pontifical Biblical Commission of the Catholic Church, May 1, 1910, to have been caused by liturgical practices, neglect by copyists, or other reasons. Verse numbering was first printed in 1509. Different traditions exist regarding whether to include the original title text in the verse count or not. This leads to inconsistent numbering in 62 psalms, with a shift of 1, sometimes even 2 verses. The Septuagint, present in Eastern Orthodox churches, includes a Psalm 151. A Hebrew version of this was found in the Psalms scroll of the Dead Sea Scrolls. Some versions of the Peshitta, the Bible used in Syriac churches mainly in the Middle East, include Psalms 152 to 155. There are also the Psalms of Solomon, which are a further 18 psalms of Jewish origin, likely originally written in Hebrew, but surviving only in Greek and Syriac translation. These and other indications suggest that the current Western Christian and Jewish collection of 150 psalms was selected from a wider set. Hermann Gunkel's pioneering form-critical work on the Psalms sought to provide a new and meaningful context in which to interpret individual psalms, not by looking at their literary context within the Psalter, which he did not see as significant, but by bringing together psalms of the same genre, Gattung, from throughout the Psalter. Gunkel divided the psalms into 5 primary types. Hymns are songs of praise for God's work in creation or history. They typically open with a call to praise, describe the motivation for praise, and conclude with a repetition of the call. 2 subcategories are enthronement psalms celebrating the enthronement of Yahweh as King, and a Zion psalms glorifying Mount Zion, God's dwelling place in Jerusalem. Gunkel also described a special subset of eschatological hymns, which includes themes of future restoration, Psalm 126, or of judgment, Psalm 82. Communal laments are psalms in which the nation laments some communal disaster. Both communal and individual laments typically but not always include the following elements: address to God, description of suffering, cursing of the party responsible for the suffering, protestation of innocence or admission of guilt, petition for divine assistance, faith in God's receipt of prayer, anticipation of divine response, and a song of thanksgiving. In general, the individual and communal subtypes can be distinguished by the use of the singular I or the plurals we. However, the line could also be characterizing an individual's personal experience that was reflective of the entire community. Royal psalms deal with such matters as the king's coronation, marriage, and battles. None of them mentions any specific king by name, and their origin and use remain obscure. Several psalms, especially Psalms 93, 99, concern the kingship of God, and might relate to an annual ceremony in which Yahweh would be ritually sublime as king. Individual laments are psalms lamenting the fate of the psalmist. By far the most common type of psalm, they typically open with an invocation of God, followed by the lament itself and pleas for help, and often ending with an expression of confidence. In individual thanksgiving psalms, the opposite of individual laments, the psalmist thanks God for deliverance from personal distress. The composition of the psalm spans at least 5 centuries, from Psalm 29's composition in the 10th century before Christ to others clearly from the post-exilic period, not earlier than the 5th century before Christ. The majority originated in the southern kingdom of Judah and were associated with the temple in Jerusalem, where they probably functioned as librettos during temple worship. Exactly how they did so was unclear, but there are indications in some of them: bind the festal procession with branches, up to the horns of the altar, suggests a connection with sacrifices, and a let my prayer be set forth before you as incense, suggests a connection with the offering of incense. According to Jewish tradition, the Book of Psalms was composed by the first man, Adam, Melchizedek, Abraham, Moses, David, Solomon, Heman, Jeduthun, Asaph, and the 3 sons of Korah. According to Abraham ibn Ezra, the final redaction of the book was made by the men of the Great Assembly. James van der Kam's The Dead Sea Scrolls today examined the large Psalms scroll from Qumran, 11 QPs, A, showing that while the early 1st century after Christ largely fixed the first 3 books, Psalms 1 to 89, Psalms 90 to 150 show variations in ordering and content, suggesting the collection was still being finalized into the mid-1st century after Christ and included material not found in the later Masoretic text. Peter Flint argues that the findings show there were 3 different versions of the Psalter circulating during the Second Temple period, with the Masoretic version being attested among the scrolls found at Masada. The Psalms were written not just as poems, but as songs to be sung. According to the biblical exegete Sodi again, who served in the Geonate of Babylonian Jews, the Psalms were originally sung in the temple precincts by the Levites. This was based on instructions prescribed for each psalm, including the lineage of the singers, specific time and place, instruments used, and manner of performance. However, anyone was permitted to read them arbitrarily at any time and in any place. More than 1/3 of the psalms are addressed to the director of music. Some psalms call upon the worshipper to sing. Several titles indicate the musical instruments on which the psalm should be played, such as in Psalm 4, 5, 6, 8, and 67. Some mention the Levites who sang one of 8 melodies, one of which was known simply as the 8th. Others preserve the names of ancient Eastern musical modes, such as Ayelet HaShahar, which is said to describe a specific melody. According to Sodi again, this was a quiet melody, almost unheard. Despite the frequently heard view that their ancient music is lost, the means to reconstruct it are still extant. Fragments of temple psalmody are preserved in ancient synagogue and church chant, particularly in the Tonus Peregrinus melody to Psalm 114. Cantillation signs, to record the melody sung, were in use since ancient times. Evidence of them can be found in the manuscripts of the oldest extant copies of Psalms in the Dead Sea Scrolls and are even more extensive in the Masoretic text, which dates to the early Middle Ages and whose Tiberian scribes claim to be basing their work on Temple period signs. Several attempts have been made to decode the Masoretic cantillation, but the most successful is that of Suzanne Haig van Tura, 1928–2000, in the last quarter of the 20th century. Her reconstruction assumes the signs represent the degrees of various musical scales, that is, individual notes, which puts it at odds with all other existing traditions, where the signs invariably represent melodic motifs. It also takes no account of the existence of older systems of notation, such as the Babylonian and Palestinian systems. Musicologists have therefore rejected Haig van Tura's theories, with her results dubious and her methodology flawed. In spite of this, Mitchell has repeatedly defended it, showing that, when applied to the Masoretic cantillation of Psalm 114, it produces a melody recognizable as the Tonus Peregrinus of church and synagogue. Mitchell includes musical transcriptions of the temple psalmody of Psalms 120 to 134 in his commentary on the Songs of Ascents. In The Flow of the Psalms, Palmer Robertson posits a thematic progression throughout the 5 books of Psalms, delineating distinctive characteristics and emphases. Book 1, Opposition, predominantly attributed to David, These psalms are perceived as the earliest in origin, characterized by a focus on trusting God, with Yahweh as the dominant name. Book 2, Communication. Despite continued opposition, this book reflects an outreach even to enemies of God. The prevalent name for God shifts to Elohim, especially when borrowing sections from Book 1. Robertson suggests Book the 2nd of may have Northern Kingdom origins. Book 3, Devastation, marked by the overtaking of Jerusalem. This book holds out hope for Jacob and Joseph, possibly symbolizing the southern and northern kingdoms. Expressions like trusting God's diminish. Book 4, Immaturity, notably, with over 10 quotes from Chronicles, indicating a temporal progression beyond the initial 3 books. Book 5, Consummation. Robertson proposes that the Psalms of Ascent and Hallel Psalms are post-Babylonian exile compositions, portraying a culmination of themes and perspectives. Most individual psalms involve the praise of God for His power and beneficence, for His creation of the world, and for His past acts of deliverance for Israel. They envision a world in which everyone and everything will praise God, and God in turn will hear their prayers and respond. Sometimes God hides His face and refuses to respond, questioning, for the psalmist, the relationship between God and prayer, which is the underlying assumption of the Book of Psalms. Some psalms are called maskil, or maskil, meaning an enlightened or wise saying, because they impart wisdom. Most notable of these is Psalm 142, which is sometimes called the Maskil of David. Others include Psalm 32 and Psalm 78. A special grouping and division in the Book of Psalms are 15 psalms, Psalms 120 to 134, known in the construct case, Shahar Ma'aloth, a song of ascents, a song of degrees, and one as Shalom Ma'aloth, Psalm 121. According to Soddy again, these songs differed from the other psalms in that they were to be sung by the Levites in a loud melody, Judeo-Arabic. Every psalm designated for Asaph, Psalms 50, 73, 83, was sung by his descendants while making use of cymbals, in accordance with 1 Chronicles 16 verse 5. Every psalm wherein is found the introductory phrase, upon Mahalath, Psalms 53 and 88, was sung by the Levites by using large percussion instruments having wide and closed bezels on both sides and beaten with 2 wooden sticks. Palmer Robertson observes that many of the psalms concern the subject of death and says this unnatural conclusion to every human life can be understood only in the context of the original threat to the original man. In the day you shall eat of it you shall surely die. Robertson goes on to say, the anticipation from redemption from the grave overcomes the inevitability of death. The psalmist is fully aware of his need for total deliverance from the last great enemy, and attests to expectation of deliverance. Individual psalms were originally hymns, to be used on various occasions and at various sacred sites. Later, some were anthologized, and might have been understood within the various anthologies, Psalm 123 as one of the Psalms of Ascent. Finally, individual psalms might be understood within the Psalter as a whole, either narrating the life of David or providing instruction like the Torah. In later Jewish and Christian tradition, the psalms have come to be used as prayers, either individual or communal, as traditional expressions of spiritual feeling. Thanks for watching. Subscribe to the Moses Film channel and give the video a thumbs up in support.